My guest today is Scott Williams, who is a director of Impulse Company, who studied with Stanford Meisner, and he comes to Australia and teaches Meisner, and he's based in London. And he's a theatre director, a teacher. Would you like to add something, Scott?
Sure. My name's Scott Williams, and I consider my job to be the bringer of good news. And so I work with actors and directors and teachers and other artists to bring the good news of theater and performance to the world.
When did you move out of America?
When did I leave?
Yes.
In my mid-30s. So it was mid-90s. And I moved to London because I was at a point in my life where I was ready to make a move for both personal and professional reasons. I was living in San Francisco Bay Area, and I was ready to make a move for all kinds of reasons. And I thought, well, where do I want to move? This is a big uproot of my life, so where do I want to move? Do I want to move to LA? Do I want to move to New York? Do I want to move to Paris? Do I want to move to London? LA I eliminated right away. If I'm talking to a working class British person, and
Yes.
the minute they hear my voice, they know they are not going to understand me, so they stop listening. So,
Really?
same problem.
Still?
Yeah.
Still?
Yeah. Less now. And the other thing is, when I'm in France, the minute they hear my accent,
Yeah.
they look at me, and because they know I'm going to be loud.
Right. You mean American accent?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Do you speak French?
No. I have a home in France,
Yeah.
and I used to have an apartment in Paris,
Yeah.
and I speak no French. I have nouns and I have attitude. That's
Okay.
it.
Okay. So back to why did you move?
Why did I move?
Yes.
Well, as I said,
When and why?
When
Yes.
and why? Okay, so it was '96 when I moved. Took about a year and a half once I'd made the decision.
So how old were you?
Mid-30s.
Okay.
And
And sorry, Scott,
Go ahead.
And you were already teaching or working?
I was running a theater
Okay.
and teaching and freelance directing. So I was working every hour God sent. And I had a relationship breakup, and I was really heartbroken by it, and I was working really, really hard and began to feel burnout. And I thought, I'm too young to be burned out. I'm 30
Yeah.
whatever, 36 or whatever I was. I can't do this. So I had the theater I ran, we had a wonderful thing we did, which was every year we did a theater tour to London. Mm-hmm. And I got a free trip to London, and all the theater could top myself up on, and that was just heaven. That was a little gift I got for running the theater. And on this one occasion, I was in a bad place in my life. I was unhappy, and I was leading the tour, and as it happened, my mother and my younger brother were along on that tour. And there was this one night when I didn't have any obligations to the tour, so the three of us went out to a theater and went to a great London theater restaurant called the Ivy afterwards, which was really, it was and is a very special restaurant because all the profession goes there. So we get there, and it's after the theater, and everybody's there. Everybody's, this table and that table, and Joan Collins is behind me, and Peter Ustinov is over there, and all these people, and I'm just in the middle of this buzz, and I am bitching about my life, and I'm saying, God, this is fantastic. And my brother made a chance remark. He said, Scott, the only reason you're not here is you're not here. And that was May of whatever, 93, I guess, or 94, May of 94. And I went, bing, and that's the moment I made the decision to move to London.
Okay, so it was not like I don't like America anymore, or I don't want to work with these people anymore. It's more like I've explored my life here. I want to move and make a new life chapter.
Well, you did it, right?
Yes.
You moved,
Yes.
and it's an amazing experience.
Yes.
Now, I don't know whether you moved because of necessity or because of choice.
Divorce.
Divorce, and so you got out of the place you got divorced?
Yes.
Yeah.
And
What a great thing to do for yourself.
it's the best. It's the best way to get over the divorce. I was 26 and I was divorced, and I felt like I was a failure because my parents are still together.
Yeah.
And I already had a child. So I had a child at 21. And I was so miserable. And when I moved to Australia, I had so many things to figure out. And I had my kid with me as well. And
That's brave.
I never thought about, when you're in the same place, you have same friends, you think about that all the time. When you have to survive, it's different. Like you forget about that and you start a new journey.
Well, it seems to me psychologically interesting that, how far you chose to move.
Yes, my mom was like, Moon, the next place further to Russia than Australia is Moon.
Yeah.
So
Exactly. And that's not accidental, I suspect. I suspect you needed that much space.
I don't know. I think I lived in America before that, and I couldn't get visa back, and I didn't want to go to England. And I thought about Australia as this happy place with surfers, because I was 26.
Right, Simon? Happy place with surfers. That's all Australia.
So, and you've never moved, so that was your place ever since?
Yeah. I moved there. It took me, because I was running a theater, I couldn't just leave. And it took me 18 months to plan, hand over the theater, figure out what I was going to do. And then January of '96, I moved to London. So.
And what did you do in London?
I did what everybody does, which is to say I made phone calls, I sent out CVs, I met people, I did all of the kinds of things. I had no infrastructure at all in London. And there was an interesting experience because I had a good deal of experience and a reasonable amount of things on my resume to be able to talk about. But I was starting where an actor coming out of drama school starts, just meeting people. And I met at a party in the south of France, as you do. I had a friend who was running a theater in Antibes in the south of France, which is on the French Riviera. And I went down to visit them 1 month after I moved. And they were hosting, it's an English language theater for the English speakers in the region. And they were hosting a couple of well-known actors doing their one-person shows.
Interesting.
It was interesting. And do you have a question?
No, I remember what you said about one-person shows.
Yeah, I don't like one-person shows. That's another topic.
Okay. Yes.
Anyway, so
Apologies.
I'm sitting in this villa in the south of France, and I have struck up a friendship with one of the actors, who's a very well-known actor named Julian Glover, magnificent man. And Julian was there doing his show, and we were sitting late at night in at the villa, 2 a.m, sitting by the pool, having a glass of wine together and kind of bonding in this amazing way. And I said, Julian, you are the perfect King Lear. And I explained to him that King Lear was an important play for me in my academic world. And I said, someday I want to direct you as King Lear. And many years later, that almost happened, but we couldn't make it work, unfortunately. But if you know Julian Glover, he would have been, he played King Lear. He's absolutely magnificent actor. He's in Tar, if you remember Tar.
No.
You haven't seen it?
I will look it up. Every time you tell a story, I like to write down the names and films.
And that's directors. A lot of things you're putting down on the paper.
No, it's great. It's educating myself.
So anyway, I was there and I bonded with Julian, and then I got back to London and I was making the calls and doing my research. And this was when internet made a noise when you dialed up. You remember that? No, you're too young for that.
No,
It made
no,
this
I actually
hideous
remember
noise.
that. I remember that. And you couldn't call anyone.
Yeah,
Yes.
and you
Yeah,
couldn't
yeah.
call anyone, right?
Yeah.
So I would, there wasn't much in the way of, well, there's no smartphones, nothing like that. So it was all, I had little real pedal-driven computer that I worked with. Anyway, I found that this place called the Actors Centre in London. And I thought, well, that's interesting. It doesn't bear any relationship, and it's very different from the Actors Centre here, which is a standard acting school, a very good one.
I went there for 6 months.
Yeah, okay, so you know it. It's terrific. But the Actors Centre in London was, sadly, it's in a different state at the moment, but it was this amazing thing founded by actors as a place where an actor could continue to train, could meet people, could develop, could network. It was incredible, supported by the industry, amazing. And I heard about this thing, and they did workshops. And so I made probably the hardest phone call I've ever had to make in my life. I called up Julian, and because I saw that he was on the advisory council to the Actors Centre. So I called him up, and I said, Julian, you don't know my work. You don't know me very well, but I see that you're involved in the Actors Centre. Would you be willing to put my name in to the Actors Centre? And he said, give me a minute. And he called back in 45 minutes. And he said, you have an appointment tomorrow with the head of programming. His name's Ian. Go. So the next morning, I show up and I meet this guy named Ian, who's the head of programming. And I had no working papers in London. I was not able to work unless I was certified by the people who hired me as providing a service a Brit couldn't provide.
Okay.
It's the only way I could work.
I see.
So I laid out that I could do this thing called the Meisner technique because I had studied with Meisner. And that was something I had worked on and taught for many years. And he got this faraway look in his eye, and he said, just a couple of days ago, in a meeting, somebody said, Ian, I've been hearing about this thing called the Meisner technique. Why don't you see if you can find somebody to teach a workshop? And there I am, sitting in front of him saying, I can teach you a workshop for Stanford Meisner stuff. Just serendipity. So I did my first class, a 2-day class at the Actors Centre in July of 1996. And that started everything.
Right.
Everything. Everything I do now started there. And in fact, I still have friends and people who come and work with me from that class all these years later.
I want to ask you why, so what is your journey? So when you started with the acting, I'm assuming it was love for acting. And how did it change to directing, then to teaching?
I love that question. Thank you. It wasn't love for acting. I never really loved acting. Still don't.
But you love actors.
I love actors.
Why? Because do you remember how you said in class that actors didn't get enough love when they were children?
I quoted somebody saying that, yes.
And
did that ring a bell for you?
I don't know, but I thought about it. I just remember that. Yes.
So,
tell me.
like you, I mean, I don't know about you, Darya, but I got enormous amounts of love. I had spectacular parents who in word and deed showed me and let me know I was loved, but it wasn't enough for me.
Yes.
No reflection on them whatsoever. So.
Well, you were one of 5, so they had. Yes.
That's the story. So going there, if you want to dive into that, I was doing some therapy one time, and I was with a new therapist, and that sounds so American, doesn't it?
I do therapy.
There we go. Okay, so it's all right.
Yeah.
And I went in to meet this new therapist, and I laid out my story and blah, blah, blah. And I told her that, I had this high-functioning parents who met when they were 12 and
oh my God.
married when they were 17. They had 5 children by the time they were 27. Unbelievable. It's
and
part
they
of the
were
era.
successful people as well.
Incredible. And I had two older brothers who were more alike than not. They were both kind of jockey and sporty. And I had a younger brother and sister who were twins and very close.
So they had each other and they had each other, but you were in the middle.
That's exactly what my therapist said. She said, it sounds to me like in your family there were three couples and you. And I burst into tears.
Right.
And that was that. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So, you know, it wasn't enough. It's nobody's fault. I'm not blaming anybody.
Yeah, I feel like in therapy at some point first you blame everyone. And my therapist still likes for me to blame people because she says that then I start blaming myself. So it's always better to blame others than yourself. But yeah, I'm at the point that I don't blame my parents anymore.
Yeah. But no, so being an actor.
So do you have like, you know, you saw this movie and you were like, I'm gonna be an actor?
No, it was in my family in the sense that my older brother was in a high school play, and I remember going to see that. That would be about 1967, something like that, 68. And I remember being dazzled by him being up there. And so theater was around. But I didn't really think about it at all. And my parents were not theater people in any way, but they liked going to theater, and they did more than most people in America at that time. They subscribed to a theater company and all that, but not really. And then when I was 14, I auditioned, and that would make me a freshman in high school, first year high school in the States. I auditioned for, I don't even think I auditioned. I think they were looking for people to be in the chorus of Oklahoma.
Okay.
And I said yes. And then immediately upon finishing that, I auditioned for a Shakespeare play called Twelfth Night, and I got in it. And I was hooked. But what I was hooked by was not acting. I loved then what I love now, two things, teaching and directing. That was always what I wanted to do. And I started teaching when I was 15 at a local school, just volunteering.
Wow.
Teaching.
You started teaching at 15?
Yes. And then when I was 17, I got a contract to run the local children's theater.
Jesus Christ.
And I was so ambitious, ridiculously ambitious. And so that's how it all got started. And I knew then that was what I wanted to do, direct and teach.
Okay. Why did you go and study with Meisner then? And how old were you? 19 when you?
Yeah, I was 19 when I moved to New York. So the story is I was working with a local guy, quite a remarkable guy. I was working at a local school with a really dynamic teacher, a very controversial and dynamic teacher, with the amazing name of Doyne Mraz. Doyne was, he's still a great friend of mine, and a very vibrant teacher. A lot of people I know didn't like him, but I loved him. And I became friendly with him. And one day he said to me, maybe a year into my studies with him, he said to me, I'd like to talk to your parents. And I said, oh, okay, sure. So I set up the appointment, and he came over to our house, and he said, I think Scott has promise, and I'd like to suggest that I enroll him at a place called the Neighbourhood Playhouse in New York City, where he could study with Stanford Meisner. I didn't hear Meisner, I didn't hear Neighbourhood Playhouse. All I heard was New York? Are you kidding me? My dream was to go to New York.
Where were you born? Where did you live?
I was born in Palo Alto, California.
Okay.
Which is...
I've been there.
You've been there?
Yes.
Okay, Stanford University and just below San Francisco.
Yes.
And that's where I grew up.
Okay.
And so I got, the bit between my teeth. I was ready at that moment. And my parents were gorgeous and said, okay, if that's what you want to do, you do it. And they I had $250 a month from them in 1977. That was how I was going to have to figure out how I was going to live on $250 a month, which would be 500 Australian.
Wow. How much did you pay?
No, less than that. It'd be 400 Australian.
For the course?
The course they paid for.
Okay, right.
And
so
in my memory, it was 2,000, but it's very much more than that now.
And like, was it every day? What was it
Yeah,
like?
it was a full-time, every day, intense.
For a year?
Yeah. And then you were invited to a second year, but I was 1 year.
Okay.
Yeah,
And I heard that he was a very stern man.
I think that's a good word. He was very. He was part of a generation of acting teachers who were. Well, first of all, it was a different era than today.
Yes,
And as you
absolutely.
and I have spoken
Yes.
about, he couldn't teach today
Yes.
the way he taught
yes.
then.
Yes.
He was very harsh and very.
Well, he thought he
Patriarchal.
was always right, I guess.
Yeah, and you know what? He was damn good at what he did. I didn't. My guilty secret is I didn't enjoy studying with him, but I appreciated everything I learned.
Okay.
So, as I've said to you 1,000 times, working with Meisner was hard for me. I didn't like the class, but the material was great. I had come from a different tradition. Because once I was 14 and I realized this is it for me, this is what I'm going to do. Literally, this is all. My very first job was paid job was working in the theater. I started working with an extraordinary man in San Francisco who had founded a theater company called the American Conservatory Theater. His name was William Ball. And that was the most formative thing I'd ever done. To date, it's still the most exciting thing. And the reason was that two things. Bill had this grand vision, huge vision, of a full-time permanent repertory company of actors, paid a good wage, able to live comfortably in what they were doing, who worked on a rotation of plays over a season. And with the time they weren't either rehearsing or performing or understudying, they were teaching in a conservatory that was designed to feed the company. And this grand vision that Bill set up was so inspiring to me. It still is the vision I have for the best way to do our work today. And the second reason that it was so profound is that Bill was the most inspirational man I've ever been in the room with. And he had this thing he called positation,
Okay.
a word he made up, which is we say yes to every idea. Whatever it is, yes, we try it. Yes, we do it. So I had come out of this extraordinary, permissive,
very
brilliant,
freeing,
exciting,
yeah.
and inspiring. Better than freeing, it was inspiration. And so I'd come out of that tradition. Then I went into this dark, angry location in New York. And as I've said to you before, New York City in 1977, when I moved there, was the rough equivalent of hell on earth. Think about movies made then. The Taxi Driver,
Yes.
you know, it looks and seems and smelled like hell.
I lived in New York for 8 months in 2004.
After the Twin Towers.
Yes, and it was still angry. I think it's always angry, but they call it honesty.
Yeah, yeah. Although you need to know that after 9/11, they changed enormously. Because before 9/11, they were just, But after 9/11, they would go, how you doing? No, how you doing? They would actually check in with you because they were all shaken. Now it's back to, get out of my way.
Right.
But I love New York. I love the energy and the passion and the...
I love New York, and I think I would love to visit again. It's just, I think living there is I don't know.
With a child, I think that would be really hard.
Not even with the child.
This is before you had the child.
Yes,
Yeah.
that was before I had a child. I think the first time, you know how now everyone talks about anxiety, and I never thought about it. I never knew that. But the first time I felt strange, it was in New York. So, when you decide to stay there and live there and like survive there and make it there, or whatever that is. I wasn't an actor then. I think it's different. Did you ever? So how long did you stay in New York?
I lived
for
there
that year?
for a year, more than a year, and then I came back to California, and then I moved back to New York for another year.
Okay.
And then that I was sort of not rootless, and as you can see, I was always directed and ambitious. So I spent this time in New York, kind of wondering what I was doing. And then I decided to go the academic route and get my degrees. So I went back to San Francisco to a place called San Francisco State University. And I got both my bachelor's and my master's degree there.
I applied there once
Did
and I was
you?
accepted, but I
Oh.
didn't get the visa from Russia.
Oh, that seems
No.
a shame. So I went then to San Francisco State and did both a bachelor's and master's. And
In what?
They had a very well-known drama program there, theater program there. But I probably snottily thought, well, I've been in New York. I've studied with Stanford Meisner. What am I going to come back and do somebody's, backwater classes in acting? Which I'm sure was wrong, because I'm sure they had brilliant stuff to offer. But I decided if I was going to go to university, it was going to be about academics. So I got my degree, my bachelor's degree in English literature. And then when I got my master's degree, it was in dramatic literature. So I was able to focus that back onto the profession I love.
You seem to be very confident from very young age. Was that always the case? How do you think? Well, you seem to be very confident in your abilities and in your intellect. And
It's funny, I had this exact conversation 2 nights ago with a great friend of mine named Charles. And we were talking about confidence. When does it become arrogance? What's on the other side of confidence? We had this big rangy conversation about that. And as we were talking, I was thinking to myself, I feel passionate about what my material is. And I think that reads as confident. The concept of confident would need further definition before I could talk about it.
you were confident even back then when you say, I decided to go back and study in the way your life was going. In the things you decided to do for yourself. You didn't seem to wonder or
No, that's good parenting. That's fantastic parenting. Who simply, without judgment, said, if that's what you want to do, you go and do it. And I mean, if they ever said to me that horrible phrase, make sure you have a backup plan, I don't recall it. I think my dad, to give you an example, my dad was a wordsmith all his life.
What is that?
A guy who was passionate about words and writing and speaking and whatever. And he was he was a man very comfortable in his own skin, a magnificent man. And he was very interested in sports and became a sports journalist right out of high school. Now, don't forget, he married 2 months after high school.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So he and my mom married then and stayed married. And then he put himself through university. I was third child born before my dad graduated from university. And then the twins came a little later. So, amazing. And that was at a time when only my dad worked. My mother only worked in the home. She didn't have a job that earned money.
Okay.
So anyway, Dad had this incredible sense of confidence that things are going to be fine. He was an optimistic man, and he kind of knew things were going to be okay. My mother was probably more of a worrier, a little bit more of a worrier, but she loved him so much and believed in him so much that between the two of them, they had this incredible thing. So anyway, my dad, I think, was unbelievably proud that I was doing what I was doing. And in fact, he ended up running an ad agency. And that was what he did for the rest of his life. And he and I together wrote 2 musicals. And he wrote the lyrics, I wrote the music and the script.
You write music, Scott.
Yeah. And then we put on these shows. So, and I was, so I have a kind of a fun story about one of the shows. The second of the shows that we did was an adaptation of a book I had loved. This was when I was running the Children's Theater. And we decided to do an adaptation of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. That's what we were going to do. So we did it, and we put it on. And we, big 1,000-seat theater. We did Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I wrote the music. I directed it. My dad wrote the lyrics. And so we worked together in that way. And then afterwards, we went into a recording studio and we laid down all the songs. I played the piano and the kids all came in and sang, and we put it all down. And I put the script together with the cassette tape of that the recording sessions. And I sent it to Roald Dahl, the author of the book, in England. And chutzpah. So I sent this to him with a cover letter saying, Mr. Dahl, we have made a workshop production. I tried to kind of back away from the legal issues, We've made a workshop production of this, and I wonder if you'd like to comment on anything and give us any advice about it. And I got a letter back from him, from Roald Dahl, that I treasure. And the letter said, I have read and listened to your material. I congratulate you on a nice bit of work. And apparently he was a very nasty man. I have subsequently learned, but his letter was adorable. And he said, I'm very impressed by your work. He liked it, or he said he liked it. Who knows? And I need to tell you that I no longer control the rights to that material. That material is controlled by Quaker Oats. And I want to warn you, they are a tough bunch of boys. Best wishes, Roald Dahl. I assume it had gone to Quaker Oats because after the movie had been made, they had the rights to the candy and the licensing and all that, I assume. I don't know. I never did anything more with it. But recently, I found the old reel-to-reel tapes of that recording session. And they're sitting in my house in London, and I don't have a reel-to-reel player to play them on. So I have no idea, but I made that in 1978. Yeah.
That's incredible. When you were telling me that story, I thought about, the word success. It just came to my head, and not necessarily in like monetary, way, but all of that, the confidence to make things happen, to the leadership to bring people together. What is success for you in a way? Like, even when you look at actors, do you ever think, I know you're going to be fine? Or when you look at someone?
It's a great question. It's a deep question. For me, it divides into parts. So talking about actors and their notion of success. I have, and I don't mean this in any false modesty way, I have no idea what talent is. I do not know how to recognize it. I don't know how to assess it. It seems to me, based on my life experience and my observations, that talent is a negligible part of the experience of acting. Everything is down to putting yourself out there, working hard, sticking with it, accepting the no's, embracing the yeses. And I don't think success, therefore, can be assessed by others. It has to be assessed by oneself. I don't know how to assess an actor's success and say, you're successful, you're not, nor do I consider it my job to do that. My job is to enable and applaud. There's a great scene in a movie called Kramer versus Kramer.
I watched it.
Did you?
Yes.
One of the ones I mentioned, yes.
Yes.
And you may remember a scene where Dustin Hoffman is teaching his 6-year-old son how to ride a bicycle. And they're in Central Park. in New York, and he's running along behind the bicycle with the little boy who's pedaling away, and he said, I got you, I got you, I got you. And then he lets go, and the boy keeps going, and he's back there applauding, letting the son know, I'm not holding on, this is all you. That's me. That's my job.
I know. Well, this is your teaching style, directing style. I have so many questions, but would you consider yourself successful? Like, what is success to you? What is this concept? How are you with that concept and yourself?
Again, it's so, it's hard to answer that for me. I would say I'm still ambitious, meaning I haven't achieved everything. This guy's buzzing us. So, have I achieved success? No, not even close. But am I successful as a man, as a person, as a human? I'm on the way, but I'm not there yet. Yeah. Different. And going back to your question about confidence.
Yes.
What's confidence?
Yes.
I feel I have comfort in my skill set and knowledge base in certain subjects. There are other aspects of my life I have no confidence. And so it seems to me you have to say, you feel confident in this or in that. Not, because the general idea of confidence doesn't make any sense. We got a big crowd here. You want to stop there to let this crowd go by?
I want to ask you about your supportive and gentle style of working with actors and teaching.
So I said a while ago, I was talking about William Ball and the great influence he had on me in terms of being positive. It also chimes in with what I believe as a person and you know, my great parenting and the things that I've had, which are essentially optimistic and positive. So that sat nicely with the young Scott Williams. Also, I think if this is going to be a deep dive into my psyche, I think a lot of my teaching is about repairing little Scott Williams. So,
I want to cry, Scott.
well, you know, that's what we all do. Every teacher does that. Teaches the thing they teach what they need.
It's like parenting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the way I do it anyway. But you see, that can be problematic nowadays because now there's all kinds of boundaries that are laid down, and I regularly, as you know, Darya, I go past boundaries. I touch people. I hug people. I'm physical with them. I say they look beautiful. And that's increasingly problematic. So I'm having to adjust my teaching.
But can you disagree? For example, I disagree that we shouldn't be hugging people, or as a person, it's not like I'm gonna, with Dee, she mentioned that she doesn't necessarily like to be hugged, and I asked before I do that, but generally I feel like, it's like common sense. I'm just hugging you to calm you down, or, it's like, I feel like it's like, where do we draw the line? Remember I shared that story in class where so I go to this church group with my 3-year-old, and the priest's wife told me that one man comes to church. I think he has a wife as well and a family, and he started teaching at high school, and he was on probation for 3 months of first 3 months of his him working with that school, and high school girl got upset about something, and in front of others she was crying. He hugged her to calm her down in front of everyone, and he lost his job. So I'm like, if it was a woman teacher, would she lost her job? I understand where they're coming from, but it's like, We can't be robots.
So you ask, can you disagree? Yeah, of course you can disagree. But on the other hand, I don't want to be a dinosaur. I don't want to be made irrelevant by something I can change. And if my teaching style needs to change, I'm open to that conversation. I may regret it. I like being supportive. I like being comforting. I like being connected. But if I'm increasingly by my younger students, and students, I work with people in the profession. I work with adults. I'm not working with 14-year-olds.
Yes, of course.
So they're the people I work with have great ownership over their own body and over their own experience. But you're right, the world is changing enormously, and my teaching has to adjust to it, whatever I feel about that.
I see. Can you tell me, when you were studying with Meisner, so was that a year of a lot of rep? Like, what was it like?
So the way it worked was that there were 100 people in the school, 75 in the first year and 25 in the second year. And so there were 3 classes of 25 each in the first year of training.
Okay.
And Meisner circulated throughout all of the 4 classes throughout the year, and all of the 4 classes had a sort of regular daily teacher who taught us that.
Okay.
And they occasionally changed around. So I got to work with basically all of the teachers who were there. And then Meisner sort of came through, and so we saw him 3 times a week, maybe. There were 2 acting classes a day, totaling about 3 hours a day. And then we had speech classes, voice classes, dance classes, fencing, all of that. It was a full program.
Right, okay. So it was a full teaching program, activity. And how big is the part of rap in the Meisner teaching?
Well, the man who's shooting us on the camera is Simon, and he and I were just having a talk about memory.
Okay.
And about whether we remember and do we remember correctly. So it's 45 years ago that I was in the classes with Meisner. And in my memory,
okay, yes.
We didn't do that much.
Okay.
When I say it didn't do that much, I had 15 hours a week of acting classes.
Okay.
Right? Amongst all the other things. In my memory, repetition basically was a 3-month process. September, October, November, and then we moved into other areas.
Would you say that rep is the base of impulse company teaching?
What you call rep and I call repetition,
yes,
is repetition is a foundation exercise that develops the first 2 words of our definition of acting. What is it to live truthfully? Is captured and developed in this exercise we call repetition. So yes, by that definition, it becomes foundational. It's basic. What is it to live truthfully? But that's not the end of the story. But it is the underlying basis of everything. Okay. Simon and I were also having a conversation about truth. What is truth? And it seems to me that in our work together, you and I, we go very deep into what is true instead of what is real. I'm relatively uninterested in reality, in actors being real. I'm very interested in actors being true, because true is so much bigger and so much deeper and goes so much farther than being real.
How do you separate that? What is the difference for you?
We allow more in the concept of truth than we allow in real life. People do extraordinary things, and the whole notion about drama is that we get to experience that. We watch somebody in an extraordinary circumstance doing something extraordinary. That is true. It's not an everyday event. And I think the kind of acting training that looks for real, that's believable. I could see that that's real. Doesn't interest me. either as a teacher or as a theater goer, really, or a film watcher?
I watched that play that you said you liked. The Screw, what is that?
Turn of the Screw.
Turn of the Screw.
Yeah.
It was my first experience watching horror in theater. And I see what you meant. I liked it a lot. And
you know, one of the things I love about you, Darya, you'll take a note and you'll act on it. It's remarkable.
Well, I was like, I want to know what Scott liked. Like, if the play is happening now and he liked it, I want to go and see what these actors do and what is the standard of acting that you like. And first half we sat very far, and second half I said to my friend John, the Russian style of theater. So in Russia, the tickets cost differently. So the first 5 to 7 rows would be very expensive, and then it's cheaper as further as it goes. And here in Australia, I don't know what it's like in London, they all cost the same. And we had those tickets up there, and John invited me, so we couldn't change it. And then after the first half, I was like, John, can we please sit on the first row? I'll ask the people, because they're free seats. I'm like, why wouldn't we? And then we went to the first row, and it was, because I want to see the sweat, blood, and tears of actors. Because why wouldn't you? But yes, it was amazing. It was great.
I'm glad you liked it.
And it was funny as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful design, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
I got away. But now I see what you mean about the real and true. So it's not like, I heard this concept, Botox acting, recently. That's what they do apparently on TV, because people want to see like everyday interactions.
What's the word you use?
Botox. It's like what women put in their forehead, so
Botox acting.
So they don't get wrinkles. So basically.
Acting without wrinkles, okay.
Yes. Basically saying that, without, it's very like natural. So I'm assuming you're against that. So it's like, you don't want to see it, what you want to see truthful but not real. Is that what you said?
So, yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
If a Botox acting, I'm stealing that. That's absolutely brilliant. That's really funny. If I go and I invest in my time and energy and my money in a theater piece, let's say theater, but we could stretch that to mean film or television, whatever, streaming. I want somehow to be changed by that experience. And it might be a minuscule change, it might not be a big change, but I'm looking for something that illuminates, that moves me, that makes me go from here to there. And it doesn't happen every time. In fact, it's relatively rare, but it's the thing I'm always on the hunt for. It's the thing that changes me. So if I see a production, as I've seen quite a few things on this trip to Sydney, and some of them have been absolutely marvelous, and some of them have had the flaw that I think is a real flaw, which is that the stakes weren't high enough for me to get engaged. So if they're not caring about what's going on, if they're just being real instead of true, then I have no reason to invest in that. I mean, we're all in the room for some extraordinary experience. We're on the hunt for that.
Yeah.
And so if their greatest interest is being lifelike, we part company.
Because people on the train are lifelike.
I can see lifelike on the way to the theater.
Okay. From that, I had that question on my list. What inspires you? Is that hunt for things that move you, or and bigger things?
Optimism inspires me. A sense that there are greater possibilities than we are currently accessing inspires me. And the pursuit of that inspires me. So I am inspired by a vision bigger than I currently possess, and trying to go after that. So when I see a young actor come into my work, and I see I say something and I watch the penny drop on their face, I'm terribly inspired by that. And so optimism, I think, inspires me most. The sense of a bigger, better world out there, if only we can find it.
Okay. And back to the generations of students coming to your classes, to your school, and I see how you took that approach, with the things that change, and you adjust to that. What can you tell me about the generations of students coming in, of actors, of people?
It's funny because I think up until recently I would have said there's no difference. That the students I taught when I started teaching in 1970, that they seemed to me to be the same, with the same concerns and the same points of view and the same circumstances. But it does seem to me that, and I want to put a great big caveat out there on this podcast, that I am very concerned about calcifying and about being a dinosaur, about being an old man and having an old man's point of view. So the last thing I want to do is talk about how good things used to be.
Okay.
I'm not interested in that. But I will say that, all that said, I have noticed a change in the last, I'm going to say, 5 years.
Okay.
It feels like a sea change. It feels like a massive change in my students, my young students. And I've spent a lot of time thinking about it, and I have to tell you, I'm in process thinking about it. I don't know the answer, but I have noticed a great deal of anxiety in my students, unlike anything I've ever experienced before. Anxiety as an existential crisis, not anxiety as in nervousness. And I am profoundly sad about that for my students. So the most common question I get asked now as an acting teacher is not how are you going to make great actors and what's your technique for teaching and all of that. The most common question, and almost to a person, the first question I get asked is, how do you make a safe space? And I think it's a very legitimate question. I think it's an important question to deal with. I want to grapple with it, but I have several thoughts about it. One of which is, I'm an acting teacher. Safe space is not what I'm here to make. I'm not here to make an unsafe space either. I'm here to teach acting. That's my passion. That's my inspiration. That's what I want to do. And making it safe for you feels like it's a whole different conversation. But it's the one that seems like it's the most pressing conversation we're having now.
I see. I'll take that to think about it. When was the first time you came to Sydney, Scott?
Oof.
And another question, when did you start Impulse Company?
Okay.
Because also you have lots of Australian students, I'm assuming.
I'm not going to remember the year. But the first time I came to Australia, to Sydney, was for a wedding. I'm guessing it's 20 years ago, but it might be a little 18 years ago, something like that. And that was just coming here, seeing this magical place, going up to Macquarie, is that right?
Yeah.
Town, which is where the wedding was.
Yeah.
And then coming back down, and that was my first trip here, and I loved it.
Okay.
So that was maybe 2005 to just throw a dart. And then I got, I don't remember how he found me, but I got a guy who was running a program here, and he had a great American playwright named Edward Albee scheduled to come out and work. And Albee, for whatever reason, had to withdraw. And he called me to fill in. Now that is a big step down. If you're starting with Albee and you're ending up with who? But he gave me the gig. I said yes, and I came out here. So that was probably 12, 13 years ago, at a guess, and that was so much fun. And that's where I began to get embedded in the theater community here. And I got to meet people like John Bell and all of these amazing Australian theater people.
What was the theater you directed at? The venue?
Where was that venue?
Or like, what was it called?
Oh, the organization was called Inscription.
Okay.
And I don't believe it exists anymore.
I haven't heard of them.
Fellow who brought me over was a guy named Marcus West.
Okay.
And so that was a very happy experience, and I really enjoyed doing that.
What did you direct?
I didn't direct, I taught.
I
taught my stuff. And then I was in London, and I was running the base program of the Impulse Company as a year-long training. And I had an extraordinary student with me, Australian student, who worked with me for a year. She came in very skeptical. Her arms were folded as she walked in the room, and she wasn't sure. I remember her sitting next to me, asking me all these questions like, what do you mean when you... She was very doubtful about everything. Well, that person is Kate Skinner. And Kate became an incredibly passionate advocate of the work, did the year-long training with me, and then she and her then husband moved back here. And she said, I can't let this work go. What can I do to facilitate you coming out and working here? And so Kate and I began to work on a program here, which has ultimately grown into Impulse Company in Sydney. And with the addition of another student, also passionate, also brilliant, named Erica Chestnut, who has moved down to Melbourne, the two of them have joined forces, and they have created Impulse Company Australia. So they are the group that brings me out here. And so now I come annually, and with the exception of 1 or 2 years, I have been out here every year for the last perhaps 11 or 12 years.
That's incredible.
And I have to say, looking at that magnificent view and this glorious day, I tell everybody I know that my idea of a perfect summer's day is winter in Sydney. Look at this. This is incredible.
I came here first time in 2011. I was very depressed. And I had the best months of my life back then. And then it took me 8 months to bring my daughter here. Well, and then back, and then we came together. And yes, it's my partner calls me vain because I like beautiful things and beautiful people and beautiful mood. Like I love the beauty. Jokingly and lovingly, I guess he calls me vain. So this is the perfect city.
Yes. It is. I know of no more beautiful city in the world, big city in the world.
If you can describe Sydney actors, Australian actors, English actors, and American actors, is there any differences? Yeah,
I mean, basically, your question is, does culture impact on the acting process? And I believe in my work, yes, I see cultural differences. Every culture I teach in gives me different challenges and also different opportunities, different extraordinary gifts. It's a question of what's in the way, right?
Interesting, yes. Okay.
Because the work is demanding in the sense that you must prepare to be vulnerable, you must prepare to be impulsive, you must prepare not to be liked, you must prepare not to be, to go farther than you're going to allow yourself in real life. So we look at what stops you. what prevents you from going someplace. The Russians are brilliant actors. I think brilliant actors. I've never taught in Russia, but I've taught many Russians. And I think the thing about the Russians is their appreciation of irony and depth. They're very deep people, the Russians are. And they, if I may, with greatest respect in the world, they have suffered. Russians have spent a lot of many centuries suffering. And I think their art is their way of living through that suffering.
Do I have, as an actor, or as an actor, do I have much in common with the other Russian actors you worked with? Do we all have this in common?
No.
No. Okay.
You have a sunshine in you that's a little unusual.
Thank you. And what about Australians and English? And American?
Okay. So all of the different cultures make different options and different challenges. And my challenge as a teacher is to address the things that are in the way. So if I were to say that there's a thing in the way of Australian actors, I would say it's the cultural value which they call the tall poppy syndrome.
Yes.
Because, as you know, the tall poppy syndrome is if any flower in the field grows taller than the rest, it's going to be cut down. Nobody is better than anybody else. Well, that's societally a marvelous thing. But my work is all about tall poppies.
Okay.
Everything I do is about a tall poppy. And so it's culturally tricky sometimes for Australian actors to embrace the glory that they have inside them sometimes. Whereas, and now I get to be critical of Americans because I am American and I spend a lot of my time in America. The primary cultural value of being an American is exceptionalism. We think we're wonderful.
Okay.
And that
I
may
thought
or
that
may
was
not
British,
be true.
actually.
No, quite the opposite. And so American actors, I find, and this is gross generalities, but okay, I'll play the game. American actors tend to think what they do works, and so there is no concept of the tall poppy in America. Everybody's a tall poppy in America. The primary British value is irony, is what they call taking the piss or taking the mick, right?
I see that.
Do you see? Yeah.
I had a British boss before.
Okay.
At IT sales company, and he liked to joke a lot, which drove me crazy sometimes. They're great friends.
I find it charming and lovely as a person who spent 27 years living in England. I love it as a cultural value. First of all, it's hilarious. Their sense of humor is amazing. But as an actor, they have to, for me, it's an outgrowth of the class system, right? Their only reaction to being stuck in a class mode is to be ironic about that circumstance. The class system is shifting in Britain, I think, but that still persists, that cultural value of irony and taking the mick and all that. So that's what we address when I work with British actors. I work with Chinese actors. Amazing. It's amazing because the Chinese actors, their two cultural values are respect for your elders.
Yes.
So this gets me everything I need.
It's Russians are like that.
Is that right?
Yes, we do respect.
Okay, that's interesting. And the other one is teamwork. This exquisite ability to work together.
But then Meisner, isn't it more individual in a way?
Well, what that means when I work with Chinese actors is that the work goes very quickly to a very deep place because they're all in it together.
Well, Scott, I have this tradition on my podcast where I like to do a Proust Questionnaire with my guests.
Okay.
So let's just get into it.
Okay.
What is your idea of perfect happiness?
other people. Yeah, other people.
What is your greatest fear?
I don't know. I don't know that I have a fear, something that paralyzes me with fear.
Okay.
Yeah, don't know.
What is the trait you most deplore in yourself?
In myself? Well, on the basis of this interview, talkativeness.
What is the trait you most deplore in others?
Cynicism.
Which living person do you most admire?
Living person do I most admire? I got so many. I can't name one. There's so many people I admire. It depends on the field you're talking about.
In your life?
In my life,
Yes.
I have a couple of longtime friends, both whom I've known, two people who I've known since I was 12. And I admire them the most because they know me well enough to call me on my garbage and love me despite of it.
What is your greatest extravagance?
Travel.
What is your current state of mind?
Happy.
What do you consider the most overrated virtue?
Looks.
On what occasion do you lie?
To make other people feel better.
What do you most dislike about your appearance?
About my appearance? Everything.
Which living person do you most despise?
People who, rather than name a person, I have people in my head, but people who lie to get advantage and make other people's life worse for it. So, I'll, since we're in Australia, I'll say Rupert Murdoch. Just there's your name.
Okay. What is the quality you most like in a man?
Vulnerability.
What is the quality you most like in a woman?
The ability to change and adapt.
Which words or phrases do you most overuse?
Groovy.
What or who is the greatest love of your life?
My original sin is that I fall in love about once a week, and it doesn't have to be in sexual love. It can be just in love with somebody. So I have far too many people to get it down to one.
Okay. When and where were you happiest?
When and where was I happiest? I'm always happy. I woke up this morning and I was happy.
Which talent would you most like to have?
I'd like to be more dedicated to things like practicing the piano, working on things. I would like to have more dedication.
If you could change one thing about yourself, what would it be?
Procrastinating.
What do you consider your greatest achievement?
Being a person with values that help the world, help the people I know.
If you were to die and come back as a person or a thing, what would it be?
Well, I want to be a person. I wouldn't want to be a thing. So I want to be a person who maybe, like a Nelson Mandela, who makes the world a better place, whose very existence makes things better for others. That would be nice.
Where would you most like to live?
I'm doing it. Because I travel a lot. I'm living everywhere.
Okay. What is your most treasured possession?
My friends.
Their possession?
Yeah. Well, that's what I have, you know.
Okay.
I'm not so much a thing person as I'm a people person, I think. I have many lovely things, but...
I noticed, I could hear that you have many friends.
Uh-huh.
You, yes. What do you regard as the lowest depths of misery?
Self-doubt.
What is your favorite occupation?
Occupation, does that mean way to spend time? My work-life balance.
Okay. What is your most marked characteristic?
Energy.
What do you most value in your friends?
Unconditional love, not approval, but love as in, if I do something wrong, they still love me.
What do you most value in your... Who are your favorite writers?
Favorite writers? Oh, God. So I have to, professionally speaking, say Shakespeare and Chekhov. Got to start there.
Okay.
But I'm moved by Tennessee Williams. I'm stirred by people like Tennessee Williams for sure. Maybe it's the person who shows me something I recognize as true but haven't seen before. Like I just there's a book called A Little Life, which is killing me. Have you read it?
Yes.
Okay.
I've never cried as much in my life reading a book, and there is a play in London. Did you go see it?
I saw it.
They're going to show it in Australia in the theaters.
Make sure you see it.
I will go see
Yeah.
it. Did you like it?
It's one of the most devastating and beautiful things I've ever seen in my life.
So they did a good
I
job.
sobbed, like ugly cried for 2 hours. And it's a 4-hour play.
Who's your hero of fiction?
Of fiction,
Yes.
Blanche Dubois. And I got to tell you why, because that sounds a little strange. When I first directed that magnificent play, Streetcar Named Desire, I've done it twice now, I was preparing for my production, and I read a quote by Oscar Wilde. And the quote was, and this is a man who suffered in his life. How are we doing for sound? Do we need to, we're okay? The quote was, yes, we are all in the gutter, but some of us are looking at the stars. See, I get chills as I even say that. And that's Blanche Dubois. She is absolutely in the gutter, and she looks at the stars, and I think that's why she's remarkable.
Did you like how Vivian Leigh played her?
Yes, I did, but I think there are other people who are better.
Okay.
I would have loved to have seen Cate Blanchett do it. I understand it was marvelous. I heard that people tell me about that production,
Okay.
rather there actually, that it was quite remarkable.
Okay. Which historical figure do you most identify with?
I'll say the first name that popped into my head. I don't know if I think it's true, but Noel Coward. Noel Coward was an extraordinary man of the 20th century. He was a composer, he was a writer, he was an actor, he was a director, he was a man of theater. He was one of the wittiest people ever to live on the planet, and he was unapologetic about who he was. I never met him, obviously. He died in 1974, but I met his life partner, and a wonderful man named Graham Payne, and I got a chance to spend a Christmas weekend with him. And of course, I've just peppered Graham with questions about Noel. And the thing Graham said to me was, the thing you need to know about Noel is that he was terribly, terribly nice.
Wow. What are your favorite names?
Names? As in, if I were to have children, what would I name them?
Yeah. Or I don't know.
I'm struggling not to reach for clever things to say. I don't know that I have a favorite name particularly.
What was your parents' names?
My father's name was Gary, and my mother's name was Elissa. They're both beautiful names.
What is that you most dislike?
What is that I most dislike?
Yes.
I thought we already did this.
It comes back
Okay, it
in a
comes
different
back.
way.
Okay. Well, I'll say what I said before. Cynicism, I have a hard time with.
Okay. What is your greatest regret?
I don't live in a world of regrets. I live in a world of trying to be better, of seeing things and trying to be better. So my regret would be if I stopped trying to improve. That would be a terrible regret of mine. So, yeah.
How would you like to die?
In my sleep.
It's the most popular answer.
Yeah, how else would you want to die? Just to wake up. That's great. Hard for other people, but
What is your motto?
what is
What is your motto?
what is my motto? Well, I'll use the motto I gave the Impulse Company, my company. A rising tide lifts all boats.
Thank you, Scott.
Pleasure. Oh, I get a hug.
Oh, you get a hug.